Become aware of your thoughts. Were your thoughts of gloom and doom or joy and anticipation? Did you know that your thoughts create your life? Are you happy with your life? Would you like to change your life to something different, new, something exciting, or something like you never dreamt could happen before? Well, you're in luck because today we're going to discover with lifestyle, mind body medicine, recall healing expert, Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson. We're going to learn how we can create the life we want, starting with our thoughts. Hello, my name is Lillian McDermott, and I am a certified life coach and the host of the Lillian McDermott radio show Classroom. And if this is your first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening and viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, as you know, I mentioned lifestyle or lifestyle. I say lifestyle because this is part of our lifestyle, but mind body medicine. What does our mind have to do with our body and how it manifests? Well, we have had Dr. Michelle in the classroom so many times, and every time she comes on, she blows us all away with some of the connections in our life. And so she is back today. It's been a while since she's been in the classroom because she is so busy. I'm grateful that she is here today. And since that is our sole purpose in life, to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that my friend Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson is here to do just that. Welcome back to the classroom, Dr. Michelle. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Lily. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be with you.
Well, the feeling is mutual. So here we go with this topic. We've talked about this topic before. I've talked about it ad nauseum in the classroom, but it doesn't seem to stick. It doesn't seem that we realize that our thoughts are creating our future, our present moment, our suffering, our joy. So share a little bit about your background and how this thought process, this idea of how thoughts create our life, has it impacted your life?
Sure. So that's even loaded in itself, My background is in social work. I have a bachelor's degree in social work. I have a master's degree in religious studies. I say God writes straight with crooked lines because all of these little adventures that I had. And then I have a psychology master's degree. And then I found mind body medicine. And it was through really the journey. My mom was severely traumatized growing up in 13 different foster homes. And that we know that when you have early childhood trauma, that can lead to a lot of serious illnesses and accidents. And my mom had both. And so we definitely had so much, to do with that. And so then my aunt, she got a breast cancer. And in that, we found German new medicine and recall healing. And that really transformed my life. And then I found Saybrook University, which was amazing, and just such a beautiful program, and learning about imagery and health and food as medicine, all the things that you have on the show, Lily, that I got to learn in depth and just really begin to grow that knowledge. And so that combined with recall healing is how I got to be where I am today.
And that's wonderful. And so as you are diving deeper into all these different healing modalities, did you even make a connection before that about how thoughts affect our life?
Well, I know that what I wanted didn't ever kind of come up. It wasn't. And so once I started discovering about recall healing and learning it's not what we want, it's actually what we need, and that our brain will take over. And sure, our thoughts are super important. However, how many times have you thought that you wanted it to be a certain way, but then it doesn't end up like that? So, what I began to understand is, first of all, it takes about 300 times thinking the same way in order to retrain the neural pathways in your brain. So that's a lot. If you do it with joy and happiness of what you want to transform, then it takes much less time, like 20 times. However, what I also began to understand is how much our early childhood, the time before we were even born, plays such a role. We call it kind of the date with destiny. It plays such a role in our life that even if we think that we want certain things, a lot of times that's not what shows up until you start to look at these other aspects and how you have been really the download is really from above us with our ancestors, with what we call the project purpose. And that really forms us. It pushes us in directions that we may not necessarily want. And so once you start to make connections about those aspects, then you really can retrain your brain to think and do certain things in a different way. But, I would find that I would have many, many times where the thoughts of devaluation, like I couldn't stand myself. I didn't see any goodness in myself. I would say just the most terrible things to myself. Oh, you're a fat pig. You're disgusting. You're not a good mom. You're not a good person. Yet I would hear from other people that that was not true. Yet I didn't believe it. And then when I started to learn that we really are downloaded with these thoughts from our own parents, and my mom was given up for adoption, so she didn't love herself. She didn't like herself. My father came from trauma as well. He didn't like himself. So much of what I was living now really belonged to my ancestors and not to me. And so once I started to give those back to my ancestors, then many things began to transform for me personally.
Okay, so you talk about this download and this, uh, your ancestors. How do you know this is an ancestral trauma that you're thinking about or dwelling on, or this is your own life and the way you're viewing things? Or is it that the way we view things is the way that we've been taught by our parents because that was what they knew? So which one is it? Is it, how do I know that it comes from me or it comes from my ancestors?
So I would say that most everything comes from our ancestors. It
Okay.
doesn't come from us. And until you do this work and clear a lot of that kind of baggage, that is when then, for my own personal belief, that's when you really truly begin to have free will. Because so much based on it's based on our birth order number, it's based on who we're named for, it's based on the circumstances of our parents,
Mhm.
that all of that is literally downloaded. And we know that this very well with epigenetics and several studies of how people that were born of children from the children born of the Holocaust survivors, they exhibited more symptoms of PTSD than did their ancestors. So it was like a download to help them to keep their family alive. They didn't know that they were living this out. They had no idea. So until you make that connection to understand this doesn't belong to you, most everything does not belong to you. And so there was the idea of the tabula rasa, where we are born as a blank slate. Totally not true. We are not a blank slate. We are an agglomeration of all of the things that our ancestors experienced, our parents experienced, and then our early childhood experiences. The things that have happened to us can be a download in that time as well. And then we live that out. And so once you bring into the awareness, 80% is about awareness, but 20% is what you do with that awareness. So all
Mm.
the tools that you teach and how to reframe and neuro linguistic programming And all of these beautiful tools, they work better when you have this understanding that we really aren't a blank slate and that we are really carrying this unfinished business of our ancestors.
You know, this falls in line with, I don't know if you know this, but on November 3rd and 4th, Dr. Bradley Nelson is coming to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and we're going to be doing the emotion code and body code seminar on those days. And many of the things that he talks about is ancestral trauma that gets handed to us and how to clear it as well. And so this is really much in alignment with what you're saying, that we're not born with a clean slate. But when you look at a child, they are just blissful. There's no prejudice, there's no pain. They're just who they are. So at what point do we take those traumas? How are they downloaded and where are they?
Well, and so even the little baby that has certain behaviors, you start to see certain things, and we always we write it off to like, oh, it's this, or oh, it's that. But when you look at what mama experienced during her pregnancy, and then you see, oh, this manifesting. For instance, I had a client who had an eczema, and I was working with her for the eczema. And the eczema is related to a simple separation. And her parents had gotten divorced early on. Her father was an alcoholic and very abusive when he was drinking. So they got divorced. And so they were out of touch for a very long time. And then she got pregnant. And then the father found out that she was pregnant, and he had been in 12-step and really had transformed his life. So he came to her and he said, honey, he said, I just really want to be a part of your life. I'm so sorry for what I've done. And, please, can you forgive me? And so, of course, she forgave him and she wanted to have him back in her life. Well, then mama got super upset about that. And this is all happening while she is pregnant. And so she got upset about that. And so then she felt this separation from mom. After baby was born, then they came back together, and then she exhibited the whole body eczema. Eczema is the recovery phase from these simple separations. At the same time she was pregnant, she was also separated from her husband in the way that, excuse me, he actually cheated on her during the pregnancy. And so they went to counseling, they worked it all out. She loved her husband, she stayed with him. Well, baby is born, and baby starts to exhibit symptoms of the behavior of, I don't want daddy, no daddy, no daddy, no daddy. And so we call this an invisible loyalty. And so it happens early on. I don't want daddy to change me. I don't want daddy to kiss me. I don't want daddy to hug me. I don't want daddy around me.
Because
And
those were the emotions the mother was
that's what
feeling
mama was feeling.
during that time.
Exactly. Okay. And so we worked for her eczema. And then at the end, it was kind of interesting. I said, by the way, how does your daughter act towards your husband? And she's like, oh my gosh, my daughter, she doesn't like my husband at all. And she just pushes him away. She won't let him kiss her. And he's heartbroken. And she's 4 at the time.
Mhm.
And so I said, talk to her picture or talk to her while she sleeps, because it's all about energy. With the same emotion, tell her, honey, mommy and daddy went through a big thing. Grandma and grandpa went through a big thing. Mommy went through a really big thing when I was pregnant with you, with grandma and grandpa. But all of that has been resolved. But I was hurt. I was upset. I was angry. And it looks like you're carrying that for me. But you don't have to carry that for me anymore. I release you to be the little girl and ultimately the woman that you were intended to be. So the next time I worked with her, I only had 2 sessions with her. She was 80% clear of her body with the eczema. And she said, but the most amazing thing, she said, is that my husband, she said, for instance, she said, she is such a daddy's girl now. And she said, it's so unbelievable. She said, this is the example. So last night I was putting her to bed, and she said, I love you, honey. And she said, I love daddy. And so, and so she said, and by the way, my husband wants to work with you. So when you find the story, because the story is kind of what leads the way, the story with the emotion. We hear people talk about story over and over and over again, but it's the story that leads the way with that emotion. The emotion is really what impacts us and stays in our senses, but we don't think about these things. We resolve our issue, but this is what we call this programming at the moment of birth or during the pregnancy. It's crazy. It's 18 months before you're born. All of that goes into the ovum and to the semen, and that kind of brings in these downloads. Then it gets transferred. What is the conception like? Was the child wanted? All of that. What's the pregnancy like? What's it like when they find out that they're pregnant? Are there any dramas? And then what's the birth and the whole first year of life like? And I've shared with you about my project purpose. And so, but this happens for all of us. It's not an easy thing to kind of, because most of us don't really even understand what was going on for mom and dad. And
Mhm,
oftentimes our parents don't even want to tell us that there was any kind of trauma.
mhm.
They just say, we love you, we wanted you, but that's not always true that at the time. And so the child will carry that in their behaviors, in the things, that go on. Another example is my son, Jeremy. He was planned, but not right in the moment that we got pregnant with him. And so my husband was freaking out. Oh my God, how are we going to pay for this child? What's going to happen? So my son is now almost 24 years old, and that kind of downloaded into him to become an accountant. So he's an accountant. So,
Okay, help me make that connection. Oh, because of
so
money.
all
Because
because
of
of
money.
money, because of the
Oh.
worry. And so he grows
What a
up.
connection.
And so we say it's ambiguous, ambivalent. We don't see it. It's not super clear until it is. And when it is, it's like, oh my gosh, how did I never see this before?
Okay, I want to go back to some of these examples that you gave.
Sure.
You had mentioned that you said okay, we went back to the mother of the baby, the mother of the baby's mother. They had a separation, and so the mother that you were dealing with, the person, your client or patient, had eczema. She had the eczema, and then
Yes.
her daughter, because the same thing happened with her, she's kind of repeated what happened to her mother, where there was that separation. There was a temporary separation with her and her husband. So with that alignment, you're able to kind of figure it out. And so then the child is also feeling loyal because at that time that she was pregnant, her mother separated from her father, and those feelings that mother was having at the time transferred onto the child, right? So did I get that correctly?
Correct. So
Okay.
what we say is the psychological suffering of the parents, and that's both mama and papa,
Hmm.
that becomes the biological solution in the child.
Okay.
They carry it out as an invisible loyalty. They have no idea that they're even doing it. And most of the time, just like even in this example, they had already gone to counseling. They had already worked everything
They
out
worked it out and everything was good,
before she was even born.
but the child was able to absorb that. And what was good is that that story was known. But what happens when the story is not known? For example, someone who's been adopted, like you said with your story with your mom, I've noticed as a coach as well that when I work with people that have been adopted, there's an underlying abandonment issue, even though they were loved by their adopted parents.
Yeah.
So when you don't know the story, how do you trace it back? How do you go back to rewrite the story?
Yes, that's a great question.
Good.
And the understanding is, of course, when you're, and so it's helpful that this child has been adopted, that they've been loved. Many times they end up in a family that has similar woundedness to their own natural family. So some of the things that happen in the growing up years really are also symbolic of what has happened in their natural family. But at that moment when that child is given up, that's the ultimate abandonment. It's about blood. And so that child carries, I'm not wanted message. I'm not worthy. I'm not supposed to be here. So much of my work in helping people is to understand that no matter what the circumstances happened to get you here, if you are here and you are alive, you are supposed to be here. Now,
Mhm.
that might take some time, especially in the adopted situations, because I have experienced very much the same thing,
Mhm.
that they don't see their value. They don't see that they have any worth. I'm constantly reminding my mom, look at what you have done. Look at the three of us
Mhm.
and how, like I get to help thousands of people in my work. That's because of you, because
Mhm.
of what you gave to me. And you had a purpose for being here, and your light continues to shine. So many things have even transformed for my mom, but it took her about 60 years
Yeah.
to not want to
Wow.
choose death by suicide every single day of her life.
Mm.
Then she found out about recall healing and began to understand. And then I also share with people that sometimes, the adoption, that the parents are so wounded that everybody has a special purpose, like you
Mhm.
said,
Mhm.
right? We all have a special purpose. If you're raised by those natural parents, you won't be able to do what you're supposed to do because they're so wounded, that you would be so wounded that you couldn't do it. So it was the best solution was to be in this adopted family. We also find that sometimes when people when they adopt children, that somewhere in the family clan, it's kind of like giving back, that there has been somebody that has been given away. And so then they're programmed, maybe from the birth order number or the same name or something like this, that now they have this desire, oh, I'm going to raise a child that doesn't belong to me.
Mhm.
And so I have seen this with many of my clients. And in fact, one of my clients, I think he has 7 children, and 3 of them are adopted. And then 4 of them are his own. And so, but in his family clan, there was 2 children that were given away. And so here he is, like kind of making up for that in his drive. Like, I got to do this.
Without even knowing it, or did he know
Not
it?
even, he had no idea
How did he
until
find out? Yeah.
when we started doing the work. So we do timeline, we do family tree, we start to investigate. One of my new facilitators coming up, she called it the health detective. So we're health detectives looking for, like, and Gilbert says, we are like Sherlock Holmes. We are looking for the puzzle pieces because we don't really know all of the things. So we put a little bit from here and take a little bit from here. And many, many times, Lily, people don't know. I didn't know. I still didn't know what happened with my mom's family entirely. But as I've continued to do this work, I've had intuitive hits. I learned emotion code, body code. I love it. It's such a beautiful complement. And so I teach my clients how to do emotion code, and just use both of them because there's a time and a place for both of them.
Mhm.
It really
Mhm.
works together so nicely. And I love Dr. Bradley. We got to be on the Emotion
Yeah.
2.0 movie together. And that
Yeah, I know. You're a celebrity. You're with in a movie with Emotion. Is it Emotion 2.0?
yes, Emotion
Yes.
2.0. So yes,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
fun.
And so it's a great documentary for those of you who want to watch it. So okay. So when going back to thoughts, and regardless of what's happened in the past, whether they have a session with you or someone who's been a recall expert or certified in recall healing, um, can we start with gratitude for whatever is happening right now and rewrite the programming of these thoughts that we're thinking of not being enough, of not being wanted, that I'm, well, you said stupid and fat or ugly or whatever it is that we are telling ourselves without even knowing. These thoughts are going through our mind over and over without our choice. It's in the subconscious mind. So that with the subconscious mind, can we work with just that? Can we just work with the subconscious mind and not connect the dots?
Mm, it's not my belief. It's like it is the awareness that when I work with people, that the start is to begin to understand
Mhm.
that everyone carries these things. That's the start. And so as soon as you could, even that, even if you don't know the particulars about that, that when you start to have that understanding, and literally the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that we actually are carrying out all of these thoughts, all the experiences that our ancestors had in different ways. And once we start to do that, then we can move to a different place.
Got it.
That's my personal belief, and that's the way that I see and what I teach people. Then I see that there's really big shifts that can take place pretty quickly. Gratitude is beautiful. I really believe in being
Mhm.
grateful for every single thing that we encounter, the really challenging, the painful, the things that bring us anger, because all of those are an opportunity to bring us insight as to what's gone on in the family tree, and to be able to transform so that we can be healthier, and so can our ancestors and descendants.
Yes, yes. Okay, so with that, you had talked about re the woman that was talking to the picture or to the child. Um, is that audibly or in her mind? Is it energetically? How do you talk to the person that
So
you're trying to release, or whether it's
so
yourself?
Right. So we tell parents, don't talk to them directly, because you know what happens when you talk to your kids. Most of the time they're like, and it doesn't matter how old they are. Even sometimes when my mom talks to me, it's like, "Wah, wah, 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 wah. You talking to me, mom?" So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I get
So
it.
we either talk to them, a great time, like think about when the babies were little and they were playing and you were talking to your husband or on the phone, and then they would come back and they would say every single thing. Well, they were in a receptive place. And so being in that receptive place is where we want. So that's why we say while they sleep, or you could put it's hard because when the babies are sleeping, you want them to stay asleep. And then if you're talking, you're like, oh no. So you could put a chair in the hallway and just, talk, but you definitely want to talk out loud, because there is something different that happens, in the verbalizing. It's like you're giving it issues so that it doesn't have to remain in the tissues. And so that's what we do. And so we can look at a picture, and you have the picture in front of you, and you're right about the energy. It's like getting in touch with the emotion that happened at the time. You really have to connect with the emotion and get into that time, like, oh, I was so angry when this happened. I was so hurt when this happened. This is what you're carrying, honey. And I release you. That's not for you to carry. You are here to have your own purpose, your own meaning, and I release you from this. And it's amazing how many times that can be enough. If it isn't, that means that the root hasn't been found. But don't worry, you don't have to find the solution will find you. And
Mhm.
so it may take a little bit of time, but as you stay with it and persevere, that's when and more will come into the awareness, more will come into, it's just like so many things. I've had numerous times where I'll be working with somebody and they'll say, oh, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so I say, okay, don't worry too much. And then they'll have a conversation with an auntie, and the auntie will tell them, oh, blah, 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 and give them all. And then they're so excited because they get all of this information. It's like when you start to do the work, more will come to the surface, and you can trust. And for me, that's the way God works. That's the divine that is helping to heal, because That's what God is all about.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is very hopeful because there's so many different ways that we can heal this generational, or what you call a download, or whatever's been handed to you without you knowing. It's wonderful to know that there are tools that we can kind of start digging, and when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That
Yes,
is always true. And so
absolutely.
so with that in mind, I want to talk about, different ways that you, my listening and viewing friend, can start your journey. I want to encourage you, in order to take 100% responsibility for your life, to go to whenyounneedafriend.com. While there, please subscribe, because, we live in a world where we don't know. I've had 30 videos removed, actually 31 removed since 2021 off of YouTube, just because for some reason that information should not, they don't want it to be there. We need to be our own MD, our own medical detective, and continue the growth and say, I am not giving up on me, and I'm not giving up on my children. I'm not giving up. So what I am doing is I am holding them to a higher level of accountability, and we'll start releasing whatever it is. So go to whenyounneedafriend.com, please subscribe so that you can be in the loop if anything ever happens where you don't see this class ever again in social media. So you will always know where to go. You can also like and follow me on all social media. When you go to whenyounneedafriend.com, you can click on all the different social media that I'm on, even podcasts. You can click on the podcast, and we're on every single podcast you can imagine. We are so excited of how we have grown despite of the algorithm. So you can help with that by just sharing this video today and sharing it with all your friends, with people that you love, and people that you don't even know very well, but know maybe that this could help somebody. This information is very helpful. You can also go to my sponsors and support the sponsors the way that they are supporting the classroom. Make sure that you let them know how grateful you are that they come every time to share their wisdom with us. You can go to the Shop Now bag, and the Shop Now bag has all Lily approved products from head to toe that are safe to use, spirit, mind, and body. You can also go to my workshops and look at the different workshops that we've done. Right now, we have the seminar coming up November 3rd and 4th. I hope that you will be desiring to come to Florida to meet Dr. Bradley Nelson. We still have tickets available, but hurry. Make your reservations while the prices are low. And last but not least, you can become an enrolled student in the classroom. So whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month, or a one-time donation of whatever it is, we greatly appreciate it. Everything, the prices of everything have gone up, and we could use your support. So whether it's your time, your talent, your treasure, all of it is very much appreciated. And we appreciate Michelle LaMasa-Dawson, PhD, who is, I have never met anyone who is a bigger detective than I am. And she makes these connections. And I love, and I even quote her whenever I am trying to make these connections that somebody would say, oh, come on. But I will well, I'm going to talk to Dr. Michelle because she'll understand. I really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about recall healing or coaching with Dr. Michelle, you can go to soultreetransformations.com. If you are a subscriber, you already have the link to her website, and you can go there anytime. I'm so grateful to you, Dr. Michelle, for coming onto the classroom. Share, is there anything that you're doing that you would like to invite our listening and viewers to your events?
So I am doing it's a level 3, but it's actually part of a whole in November. It's actually the same weekend. So I kind of wish, oh, no competition, but we'll be talking about heart and depression. We'll talk about different psychological issues on this workshop. I always give the basics when I'm teaching, so that no matter where you come in to learning about recall healing, you'll always get what you need. We talk about thyroid And so it's and mental illness in this workshop. So it's a really nice workshop. I'm starting an institute myself, teaching new people about facilitation and how to become a facilitator. That's exciting.
Mhm.
And then in January, I'll have another foundational workshop as well. So that's what's coming up. And, I would love for people to come and learn about recall healing.
Yes, and I am hoping that February 3rd, because we're doing the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit, I'm hoping that maybe we can sneak Dr. Michelle in here somewhere. She's so busy. And so we're talking about maybe doing an event together, trying to figure out something. So this is very important and very powerful information for ourselves and for others as well. So again, please share this, like it, put emojis on there, whatever it is that you need to do to kind of like surpass the algorithms, because that's the only way this information is going to get out there. So
And say a
as we,
prayer when you do it. Say a
but
little prayer, or say a
prayer,
little prayer when you do it, that it reaches everyone that it needs to reach.
that's right. That's right. So one of the things that I've experienced in life is this cognitive dissonance, especially in the last 3 years. I have never heard the word cognitive dissonance or said the word as many times as I have my entire life. So in the last 3 years, cognitive dissonance. And so many people have this facade of being very confident, but deep down inside, they are feeling like I tell my story all the time that, I do have that confidence, and I did have that confidence, especially after I became a professional. Whereas before, I was like part of the wall. I was very shy. I didn't want anybody to look at me a certain way. So that's my past. But as I've continued to work on myself, and I've learned, that I am very purposeful. There's a reason why I have gone through some of the things that I've gone through in my life, and I rejoice in it. I rejoice in it. But there was a time where I could not get out of my own head. And so, with that in mind, there's probably people experiencing maybe this I can't get out of my head type of thing. What is the first step that somebody needs to do? Because today, I am who I am, and I'm very proud of it. And I am who I say I am. But there are times where we're all human, where we resort back to some of those beliefs and values. So how do we, whether we are enrolled in a recall healing class or have done a workshop with me, how can we get outside of ourselves to say, I really want to do this work. I want to discover why I do what I do.
Well, I would say the first thing that we need to say is thank you. Thank you to our brain for what it has done to keep us alive.
Mhm.
Because the bottom line with cognitive dissonance is that your brain says, you know what? This is way too much for you right now. We're going to block you out because you need to be in survival mode because of whatever is going on. And all of these behaviors have served to keep you alive until now because you're still alive. So as long as you're alive, then those behaviors, those thoughts are not going to easily go away. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to just you then become aware, wait a minute, is this is no longer serving me well. So let me stop, let me breathe, and let me take a step in a direction that is different than I've ever gone before. And does this belong to me? So many times now I do hear people say, it doesn't even feel like it belongs to me. It feels like it belongs to somebody else. And so that is true. And so the more that a person can do that, you're literally stopping those old patterns and recreating new neural pathways to have something different show up. Takes a little bit of time, but before you know it, it's going to be very different. And like I said, I used to say those terrible things to myself. I rarely say them anymore. There are some times, you're right, where especially when you're, feeling overwhelmed or the
Triggers, just triggers in life, right?
yes, all of these things. But if you begin to take those triggers and ask, where else have I felt this way?
Mhm.
Where else has this happened in my life? What is this reminding me of that gives you the first step to start to unpack the bag? And so, oftentimes we'll find that these kinds of patterns or these beliefs, they started when we were very little. And, now we understand that they really didn't even belong to us then. But when you give them energy, and I always encourage people, I teach them how to love their little self. This just to see themselves as that little person that they were and the adult that they are today, and put that little girl or little boy on their lap and give them the love that they needed at the time that they didn't get.
Mhm.
And then to grow up with the understanding, guess what? This didn't belong to you. This is a direct result of what happened in your with your parents and your ancestors, and you don't have to carry it anymore. And so it's this reminder and just doing so that it begins to be part of who you are.
It's that's a great tangible things that we can do today, that we can all decide that, whether it's mine or not mine, I am going to dive into it. And where there's that fear, because as you said this earlier, all these things that we've experienced were intended to keep us alive, whether it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. They were all intended to keep us alive, saying thank you for being alive. And then going and being the MD, the medical detective,
Mhm.
to resolve some of these issues in your life. So there has to be a way of being. There has to be a mindset, which is, I am done. I am done with feeling this way. This doesn't even belong to me. How do I give it back? Just by releasing it, by saying, I release you? Because I know that you do the butterfly and you do other things. What are some of the things that we could say to ourselves, even if we're not sure how it was handed to us? The fact that we
Right.
don't want it anymore, what
Well,
can we say?
something so beautiful that Dr. Claude Sabat, who is one of the people that we have used his brilliance to bring to recall healing. And he created a little poem or, little saying, because our brain speaks in symbolic
Mhm.
language. And so it's, I was a small property ravaged by a storm. And what that means is you were a little baby that was born into a world of unfinished business. But today, the fine weather has returned. Today, I'm 56 years old. I don't have to carry that for the rest of my life. That was then. That's not now. The forest and river have become calm. The forest is your ancestors, and the river is your mama. The house is vibrant and shines in the sun. The house is your body and it shines under the divine light. And the sun is also symbolic of our earthly father. The field is returning to its order, health, and beauty. The field is our body and it's going back to the normal mode of operating. It did this as a turbo function to help us, to keep us alive. So thank you to my disease organs. Thank you to my thoughts. Thank you to all the things that have kept me alive till now. And thank you to myself for doing this healing work. And
I
then
love
I
that.
always say, take a deep cleansing breath and then release. And Dr. Sabat, he encouraged people to do it 3 times a day, 10 times each time. So that when you're really in the middle of just hard time, that it will come to you and it will be an automatic. I remember very clearly, I'd been doing this work for quite a while and I was kind of in it, in my head, feeling a little self-devaluation. Am I really gonna be able to get through this doctorate? Am I really smart enough? And I said, wait a minute, Michelle, you were a small property ravaged by a storm. And so I started saying it, and it was really the first time that it really landed in a way that really stopped me in my tracks, allowed me to thank my ancestors and my mom, my father for being where I was today, and that I could that belief no longer served me well, and I was able to transform it. Another thing that we use is
Before you go to the next one, can you say the poem or
without
the
all that. Sure,
without the interpretation, just so that we can hear it?
absolutely. I was a small property ravaged by a storm. The fine weather has returned. The forest and river have become calm. The house is vibrant and shines in the sun. The field is returning to its order, health, and beauty. Thank you to my diseased organs, for you have done this to keep me alive. And thank you to myself for doing my healing work.
Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Now, what's the next?
And then the other thing is when you feel or hear that you're saying something and you really believe it. Byron Katie, who is a great person, and she was very, very depressed and didn't even feel herself worthy enough to sleep in a bed. And all of a sudden she's laying on the floor and she hears these questions. Is that true? That you're not worthy enough to sit to lay in a bed? So that's what I also said. Is that true, Michelle? That you're not smart enough to get through this doctorate? Is that absolutely true? What happens when you believe that thought? And where would you be without that thought? Because so many times when we start to believe, oh, I can't do it, or I'm this, or I'm that, then you go down the rabbit hole and you're just like on, self-destruction or self-devaluation avenue. And so it doesn't serve you well. But when you stop it, that is when you can reframe and have something different show up.
And what is truth? What is truth is so important to ask as well, because we need to rewrite what is truth in our life. And so when you're talking about the releasing of self, the releasing of others, is it important that we do it at a particular time? Is it important that the repeating of it, like the poem that you just said, the repeating of it, is it the rewriting of it? Does that rewrite the programming? What can we do to know these are my thoughts and this is what I've created? How can I rewrite that particular thought so that I can create the life that I want from this point on? And how often do you need to repeat that?
So that's it's funny because I get that question a lot, like how many times do I have to do it? When it comes into your awareness, anything that comes into your awareness, the goal is say, is this serving me well? If it is not serving you well, that's the moment that you can stop and do a butterfly hug or Ho'oponopono or the small property. Dr. Sabah said do it in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening before you go to sleep. But aside from that, there's no real structure or when or whatever. I find myself doing it at a stoplight, or if something comes up in the middle of my day and I'm just feeling super frustrated, or if there's a thought of devaluation, I literally stop and say, Michelle, is that really serving you well? Take a breath. It's going to be okay. You've made it all the way through till now, 56 years old. Keep going so you can keep growing.
I love that. I love that. It's so many different times that we find ourselves, and I used to say this to the kids all the time, you're all lathered up and I haven't even handed you the soap. Sometimes in our mind, it's so much worse than the reality of whatever is going on. And so those are things that can calm, just becoming aware, oh, my mind is like going everywhere. My thoughts are going everywhere. I need to just like take one
Yeah.
thought and
A
say,
sacred pause. Take
sacred
a
pause.
sacred pause, take a breath, and ask, is this serving me well? Where am I right now? Come back into this moment. All I have is today, and one day at a time, sometimes 1 second at a time, and let me just breathe.
Mm. And I want to add to that too. When I work with people that are becoming aware of their thoughts, just stopping the thoughts, taking that pause. Another thing I tell them is that to grab something, to touch something, whether it's their clothing or it's drinking water and feel the water in their mouth, and becoming present in the moment. Because the moment that we are in our thoughts, we're not living that moment specifically. So do you have any other things to bring someone and ground them in that moment, this moment right now?
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because it reminds me right away. My girlfriend, because we're spinning and we're in our head. And so especially during grad school when it's just so, so much. And she would say, stop, drop into your belly. And so I would start to hear her say, drop into your belly, because what that did was, then when a baby breathes, they breathe. You see their little tummy
Mhm,
going.
mhm, mhm,
They're in their diaphragmatic breathing.
mhm.
So they're activating the serotonin, the oxytocin, their vagus nerve that runs through all parts of the body, but especially in our gut. And so when you drop into your belly, you ground yourself in that space. You can touch your belly, you can tap, you can anchor by doing butterfly, because you're doing crisscross, across the mind. And that's how you're dropping into your belly. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and let your tummy muscles be soft. And that is a way to get back into your body.
And let's talk about, because we mentioned the butterfly, and we're assuming that everybody knows about the butterfly, but go ahead and talk about the butterfly hug.
Okay,
We've
sure.
got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, so it comes from the principles of emotional freedom technique, where you use the meridians to anchor, what you say. So you say something that has happened, and then you process it with an affirmation. And so we use the butterfly because the liver gallbladder meridian goes all the way through our body. And so lack and upset and hurt and grudge. And so we say, even though this happened, even
Even
though
though
I'm
this happened,
so angry or upset or hurt that this is going on, I love and accept myself. I forgive myself from the bottom of my heart, because I'm doing the best I can with the resources that I have. And if you're ready, you can say, I forgive this person from the bottom of my heart, because they're doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And I don't have to carry this in my body. I don't have to die for this. I choose to let this go so that I can live my life to the fullest. And again, a deep cleansing breath. And as I breathe in, I'm breathing in peace and tranquility, and I'm letting go of anything that no longer serves me well.
I love those things. These are all tools. These are all things that we can do today to just become aware. I think awareness is key. And to become aware of what is going on in our head and our mind that could be and is creating the life that you see. Let's talk about because we only have about a few minutes left, and I don't want to go into a lot, but the goggles by which we see the world, are they also fabricated by our thoughts and our traumas?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So we look at the human being as being like a rocket, 3 level: psyche, automatic brain, and body. And that everything that we've experienced in our life, our thoughts, our beliefs, our decisions, comes from the way that we're raised, our ancestors, our belief system, our religion, our culture, where we're raised, how we're raised, all of that. And so the way that we resolve our daily problems comes from that filter. So when you begin to honor it, we name all the places that we've had these issues and challenges. We claim it. We claim the pain, the suffering, so that we can dump it and move on, and that our automatic brain doesn't have to take it out of our psyche and download it into our body. So when we give it issue, it stays out of our tissues.
I love it. When we give it issue, it stays out of our tissues. That is the quote of the day. I really have loved everything that we've talked about today. This has been a really empowering conversation, and I hope all of you feel the same way. Please share this to everybody you love, because we all have issues that go into our tissues. And then you go to a doctor, and the doctor says, oh, you've got such and such a disease. Here's a pill. The reality is that if you deal with the issues, you don't have to worry about the tissues. And so thank you so much. I just wish this conversation could last a little bit longer. Final words for anyone just tuning in, just grabbing the end of this class. Final words.
I always like to say there's always hope. Just begin now with one thing. Stop yourself when you feel that you're devaluing yourself. It no longer serves you well. And move on. Keep going and growing, and you'll get there.
Absolutely. And that I'll let that be the final word. So thank you so much. Once again, you could go to soultreetransformations.com and start your journey if this is something that spoke to you and resonated with you. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever!
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert